Got it. All right. Here we are again, live on YouTube. It's been a while, Jeff, since we did a live session, but it's good to have you
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Good to see you again. So
All
I'm tuning in here in
right.
Wailua on the island of Oahu,
Here we
and
are.
Simon is based in Sydney, Australia. So different time zones. But I'm
Oh,
really excited about this. We have a new course at Ukulele Corner we wanted to talk about, and I'll share some music and some ideas and some of the concepts behind what the course is. It's a Hawaiian music course. We already have a full curriculum at Ukulele Corner in the Academy of learning fingerstyle ukulele, and I've been for years now developing different courses, and I'm really excited about the Hawaiian course. It's something I've been wanting to add, and there's a lot of repertoire already. There are these libraries at Ukulele Corner, a lot of classical music and original music and folk songs and things, but now there's not only a library of about 60 or so songs with solo arrangements, but there's a course to kind of get some insights in the whole style of playing Hawaiian music.
so I guess before we start, I mean, for people that are playing ukulele, but and obviously they know the connection with Hawaii, where does it start to differ? If we've got fingerstyle, we've got classical, we've got pop and folk. What makes Hawaiian ukulele special?
Well, this is definitely the birthplace of the instrument, going back to the late 1800s, 1879, when the Portuguese brought in the machete and the varguinha. And those instruments, smaller versions of what I'm playing a tenor here, but that instrument evolved and it used the reentrant tuning. I have repertoire for both of the tunings. And I think it's almost like playing two different instruments when you have the low G versus the high G tuning. But the Hawaiian style is really it's where all the music started on the instrument with the Portuguese influence, but also with the music of Nalani Eha, the royal family, and music of the monarchy era here in Hawaii. It's just some of my favorite music in the repertoire. And what's amazing with the sort of the history and the development of music in Hawaii, a lot of the early pieces that were composed by Leleokalani and Kalakaua, Leleohoku, Princess Like Like, Queen Kapi'olani, and others from that time period, it's still a very important part of the repertoire. And you hear those songs played all the time. Songs like Sa Noi, or of course people know Aloha Oe by the Queen, Ahelau Makani, all these different pieces. Hawaii Ponoi and E Nihi Kahele by King Kalakaua, Ka'ipole Manu by Kapiolani. And all these pieces are, they reflect this really, I think, a beautiful connection between the ancient sounds of Hawaiian music with Hawaiian chant and oli and kahiko hula with contemporary ideas that were brought in, like the ukulele, this instrument that arrived, but also definitely the Queen was inspired by church music and sort of that style of writing. Henry Berger was this great musician from Europe who was a protege of Strauss. And so he brought in waltzes and a very deep understanding of classical music. That influence, he was a coach and a mentor to the royal family in Alani Eha and other composers of the time. He led the Royal Hawaiian Band, which is the longest running band in the United States. It started before Hawaii, long, long before it was a state, of course, or even a territory. But there's the ukulele plays a part in all the roles of development of the music. Then we get into when Hawaiian music started to travel outside of the islands at expos. Like there was a World Expo in 1893, and one of my relatives, Kalani Peterson, was there at that with Mekiake Alakai in Chicago. It's where they introduced electricity to the city of Chicago. And that was the first time that a lot of people on the mainland were introduced for months and months. There was a Hawaiian pavilion and music was being played with hula dancing and sharing the culture. That started this really great expansion of the music and influence then coming in as well from pop music from the US, a little bit of influence from swing and ragtime, even vaudeville. And so that goes into the 20s and 30s, the swing era, a lot of the Hapahauli songs, the Hawaii Calls years when Hawaiian music was broadcast from the shores of Waikiki all over the world through radio programs. And so a big part of the course that I teach is not just learning songs, but sort of learning the context of the evolution of the instrument, evolution of the sound and style of Hawaiian music, through the Hawaiian Renaissance in the 1970s with great artists like Peter Moon and uh, all of the great recordings, Gabi Pahinui band albums, their Sons of Hawaii leading into that time, Beamer Brothers, all this great music that came out of that time. To original music and contemporary pieces, a lot of study pieces that I've composed that show sort of this connection through the ages of Hawaiian music. So it's not just the instrument, the ukulele, it's the instrument is such an important, vital part of the music, but it's also kind of getting to know some of the people involved, how the music evolved over time, and the different sort of styles from the paniolo style, the cowboy style of Hawaiian music versus the swing style or things that have more of a connection to oli and the ancient sound.
There's so much to explore. There's such a really
Yeah,
deep vision, and it sounds like it also touches on all these other worlds of music as well. That so it's really interconnected. But I'd like to say hello to people saying hello in the chat. So I've got Claire tuning in from the UK, Anthony from Florida, uh, Michael Anjon is it from Arizona, and Bob from California. So we've got
all
a nice.
right. Yeah, aloha everyone. Thanks for tuning in. That's great.
And if you do have questions along the way about Hawaiian ukulele, Hawaiian music in general, perhaps you can pop them in the chat and we can deal with them or address them at different points. But Jeff, I was wondering, just to start us off, to hear the sound world, would there be something you could play to get us into that, an example perhaps of Hawaiian ukulele music?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I teach in the course, a starting point is before we get into playing solo fingerstyle pieces, I think it's really important to learn some of the song forms and basic accompaniment with strumming versus playing fingerstyle. And so a really common song form is, if you look at sort of the evolution of how the style developed, is there are the 5-bar song forms and 10-bar song forms. So one of the first things I introduce is this very simple, I think this developed, it might have been brought in with the Portuguese, the vaqueros that came in. It's a 5-bar cycle that everyone does their variations on. And it's just 2 chords. If I'm in the key of C, it's a C chord and a G7. And the progression is the 1 chord, go into the 5 chord, G7, then 5, 1, twice. And there are variations that sound like this. So all those variations were done over a repeating chord cycle. So before we get to all the fancy stuff and the variations and have a lot of fun with it, there's so much freedom. I was improvising there. I started with the theme. I really only played the theme once or twice as I was playing. Then I started doing variations, but I'm always thinking of doing this song cycle. And there's this G or C to a G7, back to C, down, and you're at the top of the form. So it's 5 bars. 2nd bar, 3rd bar, 4th, and then 5th. So that really comes from the kiho'alu tradition, or slack key guitar tradition. You hear that progression played a lot. And that evolved where each of those bars was then stretched out to make it into a 10 bar form. And that became really the standard cycle of Hawaiian song. So a good thing to, if you're just starting to get understanding of the music, one thing I encourage a lot in the course is we do a lot of play-alongs with recordings. And so doing a lot of listening, starting to hear these progressions so they feel comfortable and natural, then gives you freedom to get to know the fingerboard and explore like, okay, I played a C here, where else can I play it? And how can I play some phrases and things that are typical of this style?
Yeah, you know what amazes me is that you're playing two chords more or less back and forth, and yet it sounds really authentic. And if you asked me, I'm more of a guitarist, although I can play ukulele, and we have sat down at your place in Oahu, but I would play something that sounds more like Peter, Paul, and Mary. Like it would sound way off, you know? And so there's all these little things. They're very subtle. Maybe some of them you're not even, well, of course you'd be aware of it because you've gone through the whole teaching process now. But sometimes they're just those little things that come from living the world of that music. And then the little nuances that give it that sound world. I remember when we were in your living room on that couch, on that very couch,
Oh yeah,
mind
right.
and it was just you were just showing me that little slide from the second fret to the third fret. Even that little slide started to sound, the sound world started to open up. And little things like that, little insights, which sometimes can be very simple actually, can really transform the playing. So it's wonderful to see you take those two chords and then start improvising and getting more and more complex, but it still is rooted in those two chords, which is pretty amazing. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. And so there's sort of a language, like any style of music. What's really fun is you start learning the language and the inflections, the way that you bring the music to life. And I really love the fact that Hawaiian music is really, there is such a clear lineage of the music. So you can really trace back to, I like to teach some of the music of Ernest Ka'ai. He was one of the first real ambassadors of the ukulele, traveling around and playing. He really had a classical approach, and he came up with his own system of notation, even the way that he would notate scores. But the little hammer-ons, pull-offs, and slides, the rhythms, they all have sort of a place that they came from. So I have all these footnotes in my mind, whether it's from particular artists, particular songs, or parts of there's like the Molokai style strumming. I grew up on the ranches on Maui. They're regional, songs for that area. There are things that tie everything together, but then there are some really clear things you can identify with different sounds. And so one sort of thing to think about, if you think of before the ukulele was introduced in 1879, if you think of the sound of the music going way back, even before Western contact, a lot of the music was based on oli. And oli wouldn't have like that. What I played, it almost has a chant like feel to it because it's just two chords going back and forth. But in the early days, there was even just no chord at all, but there was sort of melodic phrases, and they were based more on minor harmonies. But what was taken from that, in a way, and influenced the evolution of the music when it was introduced to the Western harmony and chord progressions, song cycles, and sort of things, was some of the rhythm. And so a big thing that I was doing there was imitating some of the sound of the ancient kahiko hula rhythms. And there's sort of this, you hear the ipu, which is often a percussion instrument that's used for oli. That's a very basic sort of olapa rhythm that you hear the ipu play. And so sometimes we imitate. And that really is the basis. I have that rhythm in my mind as I'm playing. I'm thinking. So what I'm playing is, there's harmonies. I'm using a major scale versus the ancient minor pentatonic sort of sound, or even just a few notes with a minor tonality. But that rhythm is what connects it. I think that's a really important link.
So we have some people tuning in and because people come in at different times on a live stream, but we're sort of celebrating the release of this new course that you put together on Hawaiian music, which seems like, you know, a really important contribution to the ukulele community, actually, because of your depth of understanding of the music and your connection with that tradition as well. And one question that Claire asked, because she teaches ukulele, and she wanted to know if you're teaching a beginner, what song do you teach first? And I suppose in this world, where did you start with songs in this course? Like, what were some of the earlier songs that you taught?
So I start with progressions that then show you the song cycles and forms. And so that 5 bar progression I mentioned is one. And then from there are songs. A really good one is called E Liliu E. I teach that one where it just extends that form out to then become a 10 bar cycle. And that is really one of the more standard song forms. There's usually an 8 bar. A lot of these songs are based on vocals. So 8 bars of singing with a 2 bar vamp. And I've always thought the vamp is there because hula is a big part of the vocal music. And so in between each verse, the way that Hawaiian songs work, there's a repeating melody and then many stanzas of lyrics. So instead of verse, chorus, bridge, like a pop song or something, it's just verse, 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 verse. But having that vamp in between gives space where the hula dancers are telling the story with their motions and their hands and their body is moving and telling the story of the song. But they do a kaholo or a pause in telling the story between verses. So it's like taking a breath, ending the paragraph before a new chapter comes in. And so that knowing that, feeling that cycle of the 5 bars or the 10 bars is important. So I introduce some basic songs that have that, and then there are all sorts of variations. We get to contemporary music, and you will find choruses and bridges. Even in the song like Aloha Oe, which goes way back, that was influenced by 2 songs, actually 2 melodies that the Queen had in her mind when she was leaving from where I live, this part of the island, an area called Maunawili, Olomana. She was riding a carriage over Nu'uanupali, going back to Honolulu. On the way there, she had just met with friends at this estate and had these 2 melodies in her mind and wrote the lyrics and sang in the carriage. By the time she was back home, she'd written Aloha Oe. But that's an example of a verse and chorus form. But so I might teach a song like E Liliu E. It might even have a swing feel. I might do a vamp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. Here comes a 5 bar. Back to 1. 1 goes 5. End the 8 bar phrase, back to 1. And I'm going to do a 2-5-1 vamp, which is a B7, E7. I'll play the melody now. You have it in your ear. So here I'm at the top of the form here. I think it's so important when you're first starting to get familiar with this music is do a lot of listening and get familiar with the song cycles. You'll notice like so many songs then you'll have an immediate connection with because you'll feel, okay, here comes my vamp. I'll play the theme again. Speaking of Liliuokalani, this song was written for her. So another example of music that goes all the way back to the 19th century, but still very relevant. Typical ending there. So but then that combined a piece that goes back to the 19th century with that influence of that bouncy sort of swing rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm swinging the downbeats. The song is often played going back to that Olapa Ipu rhythm. And so I think those getting a sense of a couple of basic rhythm styles. That's one of the first things I introduce in the course too, is being able to do a strum that's based on swing or one that's based on the Olapa or even 8th note rhythm, even if it's just down, down, up. We use that in so many songs. If I play the same song, same progression, strumming pattern will work and the melody would work fine over this as well, I'm still aware of the song form, but I'm able to do accompaniment based on different rhythms. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, even eighth notes versus swing. I'll try that. They call it the double strum, is something I introduced. Same progression. That has a strong connection back to that. So that's another great thing about the music. You can interpret songs with different feels and they still sound great and really work nicely.
Yeah, so this course is part of the membership at ukulelecorner.com. And for those watching on who perhaps they strum and maybe sing some songs, like how do I, this seems like quite almost a leap to get to what you're playing right now, but there are other courses that walk them through the techniques. There's fundamentals of ukulele fingerstyle playing. There's a whole fingerstyle curriculum that develops the ability to use different aspects of the instrument, and perhaps in a different way than people are used to if they're singing and strumming. And then the next step of this course is you do start going into fingerstyle, into Hawaiian music. So what unit does that appear, the fingerstyle technique?
So the first unit demonstrates various strumming patterns, and it has play-along tracks with chord charts. So it's all based on strumming rhythm, developing the ear, developing the coordination to do the various strums, and starting very simply, even for someone who's just started. Before you get to that complex double strum and all that I was mentioning, there's a whole series of really just playing downbeats, getting comfortable reading a chord chart, then also being able to look at what's called a lead sheet or a song sheet that might have lyrics with the chord symbols, or actually chord symbols written above a musical staff with a melody on there. So we'll do a lot of that where we'll start just playing single note melodies, but also be able to play the chords. So with any of those songs, you could use fingerstyle to accompany versus strumming. So often in a group, like the traditional Hawaiian trio, the ukulele is often playing rhythm by strumming, but fingerstyle is so powerful, it's so beautiful. So unit 1 focuses on strumming. Then I introduced playing the similar sort of songs, but with fingerstyle accompaniment patterns. And I introduced all sorts of right hand patterns. There's so much, so many choices to make. Whether it's like what I think of as the Paniolo style alternate bass, driving rhythm with a thumb, or sort of ballad. Then inflections that get into the imitation of feels like the double strum. Putting in, a couple little variations. But it starts with just right hand patterns and applying them to playing songs. For example, I'll demonstrate, and if you have your ukulele, get your ukulele out, and all you need to know to play this song is to play, it's going to be in the key of G, it's going to be G, C, we're going to use a D7, back to G. So 1, 4, 5. We're also going to introduce the 2 chord, which is A minor. And I've been very fortunate where I've been able to work with some wonderful musicians here in Hawaii, and a big part of what I like to offer with this course is play-along tracks of actually commercially released recordings that I've done. And one song is a song I wrote for my lovely wife. It's called Kahealani. And I wrote Olelo Hawaiian lyrics to this, and Amy Hanaiali'i, a wonderful singer who I've worked with for many years and such a dear friend, one of the most gifted singers here in Hawaii. She's such an accomplished artist. I did a duet with her with guitar and her voice, but we're going to try to play along with the track playing ukulele. So see if you can follow me, and I'm just going to do ballad style fingerstyle pattern. So a particular pattern I might do is if you play a G chord, 4, 3, 2, 1, then back down 2, 3. That aligns really well with that down, down, up, down strum, because I'm not playing on beat 3. 1, 2, and miss, and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So the idea is they're picking patterns that align really nicely with certain strumming patterns. So they link together. So give that a try. Let's try to play just for fun. I have the track pulled up here. And this is with Amy Hanaili is singing. We're in the key of G. Here's a D7 chord, G, C, G to D7. So 1, 4, 1, 5. Now 5, 1, 5, 1. This song has a verse and a chorus, so more of a contemporary sound. 5, G, C, G, D7. G to G sus. Chorus, A minor, D7, G. G, C. Now 1, 5, 1, like we did in the verse. And it continues on. That's one verse of the song. But I really think it's essential when you're learning this music. A lot of it is learned by ear. And of course, through the Ukulele Corner Academy, so much of what's there is following video lessons. We do live sessions like this. We have monthly live sessions for all the members, which are a blast, where there's a lot of interaction and questions, and Connie Papila are playing music together. But I think having those play-along tracks is really essential to develop your ear, to be able to listen to something else while you're listening to yourself play and work on your feel and the flow and the timing of the music. So that's a really important part of this course. There are many elements. It's getting the technique, applying it to understand how to do accompaniment, whether it's strumming or fingerstyle. Knowing, as you notice how I was calling out those chord Roman numerals, I think that's an essential part of it as well. And so I'll say, okay, play the 1 chord. So we have some lessons on just getting with the basics of 1, 4, 5. Sometimes there'll be a 2 chord or maybe a 6 chord. Just a handful of chords. It's nothing too elaborate, but getting familiar with immediately finding those chords in various keys. That's an essential part of it. Then applying that to playing, like some songs all have the same progression in about 5 different keys. So you'll really get a lot of experience and exposure to the concept of thinking of the Roman numerals as you play and then translating it to actually playing the ukulele.
It sounds like a really good balance. We have so much on the site that has an offering centered around classical music. That's sort of where we started, collaborating. And that world can sometimes feel a little rigid or a little constricting. And also you listen differently. You're thinking of like, am I playing the right notes,
Yeah.
Whereas this music, and other genres as well, where there's a bit more oral tradition and there's listening and there's improvising and there's playing in groups and ensemble playing, it brings such an integral part of music making. It's kind of a bit more fun, a bit more free, perhaps people might describe it, but it also absolutely complements one another. They intertwine and they help one another, I think. So I think this is such a wonderful addition. I just wanted to acknowledge a few people saying hello. There's been a lot of people saying hello in the chat. Frank and Margie and Bob Taylor and Anthony and everyone's saying hello. So there's definitely some
All
members here.
right. Well, Shaka, everybody. Margie up in Maine. Lots of good friends. I love the community that we have at Ukulele Corner, and I've known Margie for a long time, beyond the Ukulele Corner as well. And she's such a gifted musician. She's really inspired a lot of the other students. We have a forum where people can share their progress with videos and things. And yeah, a good example of how things start to tie together. If you work on going through the basic curriculum that we have, you learn how to get a nice tone and how to have your hands set up, how to play something like a warm sound versus a brighter sound. Even though I'm playing Hawaiian music and I'm bringing in ideas of improvising, I'm not playing, a lot of the parts I actually wrote out accompaniment parts that are very repetitive, but there, as you say, there's freedom in the music. You can I might change the picking pattern. I might throw in a little melodic line. It's a really big part of the style. But if I wanted to play really sweet, or maybe use all my thumb sound or a rest stroke on the high note, bringing out the high note, I'm just whispering the lower notes. Here are the melodies strong. We learn different chord shapes. Maybe I'll play a different chord shape up here. I'm improvising, but that chord progression is what's in my mind, but I'm using expression with the hands. So I was using rest strokes to bring out sort of a melodic feel. I think of it, sometimes accompaniment is more than accompaniment. It's almost like counterpoint. It's having, especially when you're playing a duet like that, it's a conversation that's going back and forth. And a big part of what I want to try to emphasize with this course that is such an important part of knowing Hawaiian music is filling different roles and deciding what you're going to do in different situations. Are you just going to be doing a groove and laying down a rhythm? Or are you going to be playing something that's more interactive and free? I'll give a quick example. I'm doing a concert. If anyone's here on the island of Oahu, on March 1st, I played on Raiatea Helm's new album. And we're doing on March 1st a release party. It's going to be great fun at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, at the very renowned Monarch Ballroom there. And there's going to be this amazing group. The album is a throwback to the early sounds of Hawaiian music at about the turn of the century, where that influence of the Royal Hawaiian Band and that music of Nalani Eha and other composers was really, it was bringing together, as the ukulele was just joining in, the party, strings were there too, and flutes, brass instruments, and upright bass, the steel guitar, before it was even amplified, more like the dobro, that kind of sound was a part of it. So let's just have a little play along here. We won't do the whole song, but this is one of the songs I'm going to play with Raiatea that's going to show a different side of ensemble playing. This is groove driven, and it's a swing feel, and it's like a wiha song. It's like a party song. So we have the nahe nahe, sweet sound of Hawaiian music, and then there's the kolohe, rascal kind of fun that's in the music too. And each song has a great story behind it. And so this one is just, it's a party song. And listen how you're going to hear it, we're going to be playing along with some violins. There's going to be a dobro player. There's a couple musicians from Nashville were involved in this. Lanikila Kawai Hau. And it's in this, we're just going to play in the key of F. It starts in 5 chord, goes 1, and towards the end of the progression, there's a 4, 5, 1. It goes through a cycle. You're going to hear these old scratchy record noises when it first starts. 5, C7, F. Now we're just trying to, even if you just mute your strings, this sound influenced Hawaiian music. This is the old swing sound. Here comes a 4 chord, 5. It has a backbeat. 1, 2, 3. Here's the strings. Accenting 2 and 4. I might play no open strings, so it can really be driving. You're more of a rhythm player, you're a percussionist, but it's an important part of the Hawaiian sound. E flat, C, F, C7, F. Stay out of the way, right? Give that dobro some action. And inspired by Soul Ho'opi'i, real innovator. on the steel guitar. Now, as a throwback to the Kika and the Pila. Kika's guitar, Pila is the violin. Hanika Pila, play the fiddle. That's what it means. I'm using my thumb for a real fleshy sound. So the idea is like being able to keep a nice groove going all the way through. Nice, even though it's a fast tempo, I'm counting on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Give it the swing. Anyway, that's an example of a different applying a swing rhythm to one of those sort of more up-tempo songs. Very different than the song Kahealani. And it was definitely a driving swing sound is really the essential like role of the ukulele. But then being able to play fingerstyle patterns, maybe taking a pa'ani or a solo, knowing the melody. I love that little, it's called a paggiatura in classical music. So being able to play melodically and understand the connection between the harmony and the melody is important as well.
It's pretty not. It's pretty hard not to have a giant smile on your face when you listen to that.
Right. You're having a bad day, just put that on and just start going for it. And Raitea is one of the most gifted singers, I think, bridging the gap from the early days of the music to the modern day. Her ha'i, her falsetto is just so beautiful, and she's such an incredibly kind person. She does so much for the community. She works for Liliuokalani Trust. They're doing all these great outreach programs, and so it's a real honor to work with her. And the band it's going to be a great band that's playing on the show.
People were getting excited about the music and they were asking where can they buy your music. So that's over at your website, jeffpeterson.com. Do you want to, and also do you have it on iTunes and Spotify and all those things?
Yeah. You can look up my music on any of the streaming platforms. Just look up my name, Jeff Peterson, and then jeffpetersonguitar.com is where I have a lot of my CDs that are available. I've done, as I mentioned, but I do, those are the projects that I've produced. But I also do a lot of session work on other albums and things.
And could you spell out the name of that singer once more?
Yeah, Raitea. She's named after one of the islands in Tahiti. And so Raiatea, Helm, and the Helm family, Molokai family, she's a Molokai girl. And her uncle, George Helm, was really one of the visionaries and most important figures of the Hawaiian Renaissance. He passed away in protest of the bombing of the island of Koho'olawe. When I was growing up on Maui, you could look over and see actually these plumes of smoke. The military used the whole island as target practice. And so, anyway, her family has a really important heritage with the evolution of the modern sense of Hawaiian culture and that Hawaiian Renaissance era. And George Helm was such a talented musician, and he never went into a studio and did an album. There's one album that exists of his music that was just a recording from a live performance he did at the Golden Coin. But the Helm family, they're wonderful people, and as I mentioned, Raitea is just such a great artist. That song the new album is called A Legacy of Hawaiian Song and String. I play a lot of the guitar parts on the album, and then in the show I'm going to be playing the ukulele parts as well.
Yes. So you've already had some quite virtuosic playing. So we started with some chords and progressions and patterns. We went into fingerstyle. Where does this course end up by the end? Where do you take everybody?
So it's a slow process. I'm showing all sorts of things, kind of the goal of it all, but there's a step-by-step process. So first step is getting familiar, as I mentioned, with the chords, strumming, chord cycles. And Unit 2 gets into fingerstyle playing and accompaniment. Unit 3, I introduce playing some simple basic melodies, and then reading lead sheets that have the chord symbol above for the melody. You can play both parts, switching back and forth with play-along tracks. Then we get into some of the basic solo repertoire. And that takes us through Unit 3. In Unit 4, then we start getting into what I think is really fun. The essential part of the music is Vamps. we learn a series of one measure and two measure vamps that are that little two bars that are usually done at the end of that verse cycle that I mentioned. It's so essential to know your vamps. And within the vamps, you start to learn the language of the music. For example, there's a famous one. Here's another one. These are all just lines that go in the key of C over G7. See, so if I'm playing a song, I'll play a song called Kalenikai. Vamps are built into the melody. Here's that vamp again. Once you've learned that phrase, it will work again and again and again in traditional songs. And we learn it in various keys. We learn how to play it with low G and high G. I've mainly been playing the reentrant tuning today, but low G, actually a lot of the, most accomplished Hawaiian ukulele players like Herb Ota Jr., Brian Tolentino, Led Kaapana, just to name a few. There's so many, but those are some of my friends and ones who I had great admiration for. They all play the low G, and I do often as well. It serves certain keys, like the key of F, having some nice lower notes to play. Having those notes is very helpful. So I explain a bit of the difference. I like to do rhythm with the reentrant tuning. It sounds kind of muddy sometimes with the low G, but having that in there is a part of the vamps. Then another thing I introduce in the fourth unit is sixths and thirds, and how that you can play whole songs and really get into the Hawaiian style, especially the sixth intervals. You hear things like this. You heard a song going by and a cycle of a chord progression was brought out by just playing two notes. I was just playing a note with my thumb on the third string and a note with either index or middle on the high string. That's the interval of a sixth, and we learn how to harmonize scales and see how they, just two notes, instead of playing a big, complicated, hard to play chord, you just play those two notes and you can actually imply harmony. And so that's one of the most common techniques that's used when playing melodies in Hawaiian music. For example, let's see, are there any in here? I'll bring up a song that is, it's related to that 5-bar cycle that I talked about in the beginning. It's called Pupu Hinu Hinu. You'll hear one measure vamps and a lot of six intervals in this song. So just to give you kind of a sense of a piece that applies this. Sixth, basic chord, vamp. Melody based on sixth. There's a vamp. Sixth. Vamp. That's a song that everyone here in Hawaii, I learned it when I was in 5th grade. We have these May Day celebrations. All the school kids learn certain songs. So I remember our 5th grade May Day song was Pupu Hinu Hinu, a song about the shiny cowrie shells, the seashells. And that was written by Keola Beamer's mother, who was a really important figure in that time leading up to the Hawaiian Renaissance of the 70s. She fought to have Hawaiian olelo and language taught at Kamehameha schools again. For a long time it wasn't, and it's hard to imagine that. But so Wainona Beamer had a really important impact that opened the way for music to be celebrated by the younger generation. Language schools, which now thrive, they're all a whole generation now of children who are fluent in the language that was almost lost, and it was preserved often through song. But now it's gone so far beyond that, which is so exciting to see. But that composition is just one she taught, to teach olelo and to teach children. It's a children's song, but it's a good example of hearing some of those six intervals that you use in a traditional piece. So anyway, from that point, then we're going to get on. There are going to be 8 units in the course, and right now I've introduced the first 4. Going forward, we're going to get to intermediate level solo pieces and more play along tracks with more involved arrangements. And I've actually written out the parts for the accompaniment. And it just continues to develop. You'll start to develop phrasing, a feel for the music, extend your repertoire. And we're going to get to the point where you can start doing your own arrangements and pa'anis or solos. You'll have a grasp of the phrasing, the hammer-ons, pull-off slides, harmonics, sort of techniques that we use, the 6 intervals that move around, those vamps, more chord shapes, the way that the swing style differs with how chords might be moved around. Those sort of, that can be a part like jazz sort of style strumming and feel with the chord, more motion with the chords, more ninths and minor chords, diminished chords, all those sort of things. They start to get introduced a little bit more as we get into the 5th unit. And then we're going to get into more advanced material in the later units, building repertoire and building techniques that by the time you get through the end of the course, you'll have a understanding of how the music progressed over time, and quite a range of songs you'll be familiar with doing either accompaniment or playing solo arrangements of. And then you'll be able to start to make things your own. I think that's where it's really fun, and there's freedom in this music really to do that, where your voice can really start to shine through when you get some of the understanding of the phrasing and the concepts behind the songs.
Well, it's a huge endeavor, and I mean, already with the first 4 units up, I think people are really enjoying it inside the academy. A lot of people been commenting that they're loving the course already, and
Great.
another 4 units to come, getting so advanced. This is kind of like years of study there. It's like a university course you're
Yeah,
providing.
yeah. It took me years to develop this. I've been thinking about this for a very long time, and it's what's going to correspond with this. I just am finishing a book of reentrant tuning. It'll end up being about 60 songs, and so solo arrangements, and all of that repertoire will be there in lessons. There already is a Hawaiian library, but I'm gonna extend that quite a bit with the new arrangements that I've been working on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if everyone, I mean, I think a lot of people like who are members already appreciate the work that you put in, but there's just a huge amount of work, and it's very evident in this session that your knowledge and connection to the tradition, and sort of you're a flag bearer for this music. But the work you put in as an educator is just immense as well, and you take great care with your teaching and thought as you put all the materials together, and then of course all the time spent putting it together. So if you're not a member already of Ukulele Corner Academy, I highly recommend, if you're interested in this world, if this kind of music has piqued your interest, then you'll be delighted to come in and see what Jeff's put in together for this curriculum, because it's really outstanding. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone. I know there's been some questions in the chat that are a bit, we wanted to keep it focused on Hawaiian music. So there are plenty of live sessions each month, where there were some questions about string changing and things that are coming in. So
Yeah.
my questions are perhaps better suited inside the academy at those live sessions each month. Um, and yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and a look into this world of Hawaiian music. It's really captivating and makes me want to dig into it further. I'd love to go and do some more listening. Some of those tracks you played along with are just beautiful.
Yeah.
Your
Such
wisdom
a
and
such
singers.
an amazing style, and there's, as I mentioned, one thing that's great about it is so much of the music there's a legacy there. You can start listening to that early sound, the soul ho'opi'i recordings. The recordings exist. Hawaii Calls era, all that music, and then the music of artists like Peter Moon and Gabby Pahinui, and all the great sounds of the 70s, and even some of the great like Kalama Brothers and Kahawano Lake, his baritone ukulele playing. And there's just such a list of great music to explore. Then getting into more of the modern sounds, of course, with Jake Shimabukuro and all that he's done for the ukulele. Um, and then the modern artists who are playing the music too. So I try to represent all that in the course. And yeah, I hope to see some of you become members. Check out the what we offer at Ukulele Corner. We have a discount. I don't know if that's available today, but we often have coupons, codes that are
Yeah, I
available.
think for new members, people who come in today, we have a discount. Hawaii 20 is the coupon you can put in on the checkout page. That's a 20% discount there, just for new members that are coming in today. And we'd love to see you in there because it's a really wonderful place, wonderful community, and huge teaching resource. So we hope you can join us. But thank you, Jeff. It's been a great session.
Yeah, yeah, great to see you.
And thank you everyone for joining in.